Good morning, everybody. It's Boxing Day, and I'm just going to do a couple more thought videos about the vegan weaponry that's plaguing my mind. That can be very cheap. All the materials virtually can be grown by agriculture and can be produced locally, no matter where you live around the world in these tiny little places, to take money away from the military industrial complex and put it back down to local countries, local manufacture, using older technology, so no one owns the patents for anything. It's all just very simple. Okay, getting straight into it. Today I don't have any little models or anything to look at, but I'm going to talk about a vegan based light armored vehicle, armored fighting vehicle, something like it's a support sort of vehicle, and it can back up to a couple of videos back where I talked about an amphibious Schwimmwagen. It could run with that. But at the end of the day, it's a light support vehicle. And where I think it would come into play would be in this Asian region, especially where there's mountains and jungle. And on all these little islands where weight is an issue, logistics is an issue. So to make them small, make them very light, potentially, I think, amphibious as well, because then that's less logistics you need for support. And again, made of fiber reinforced polymers, made out of wood, made out of different laminates. We've seen what modern body armor can do with plate carriers and Kevlar, etc., and Kevlar plating and things like that. So Kevlar and reinforced polymer and resins can definitely go a long way to defeating, or at least slowing down and minimizing the impacts of kinetic projectiles. Okay, adding ceramic and things like that could also go a long way, and then also different fiber boards as well can go a long way to stopping explosives and shaped charges within reason. And the reason, and I'm going to put up a couple of photos there, right? And what inspires me about these ones is a French tank from World War I. The Americans adopted it in huge numbers, and it's the Renault FT-17. And then I'm going to follow it up with a British armoured fighting vehicle, the Daimler Ferret from, I believe there was the Dingo of World War II, and then just post World War II, then it became the Ferret. Okay. Now, the reason why I like these two little vehicles is they're very small. Okay, and if you look at the photos, you can see that the main chassis, or the main crew compartment of the tank, is actually very, very narrow. It's basically not much wider than the width of a man's shoulders. So the idea with these is, yes, being very small, very light, smaller engines, smaller ground pressure, so they will go through boggier areas, they will climb hills, etc., etc. You could have, and I'm thinking of blending the two, and then that way you could have a single chassis or a single fighting compartment that's modular, that you could run tracked or untracked, with just modular bolt-on, different components, but you're sharing the same fighting compartment, sharing the same turrets, etc., same engine components. And whether that's the same as the Schwimmwagen, whether that's the same as a small plane, mass produce what you've got. Again, made to run on biofuels. So the fuel can be made and produced and grown anywhere. Doesn't matter how tiny the little island is. You don't need flat paddocks. You can harvest them in, you just use what you got. Whatever your terrain is, that's where you farm, that's where you produce your product. And they're not made to be main battle tanks. They're made to be small. Now, when I say another reason for this is a smaller target is hard to hit. Okay, so if we have an Abrams battle tank or any main battle tank these days, if it's hit with a man-portable rocket, a modern tandem warhead rocket, you've destroyed it. You've destroyed a machine that costs millions of dollars. You've destroyed the crew and all of the equipment and the logistics to get the crew out of there. Move, and if you've got a pass or a choke point, and that tank is blown up for however it's blown up, whether it's roadside bomb, IED, tank mine, rocket, whatever. Now you have a 70-ton obstacle that you need to move, and if you've got banked up traffic behind that, you're sitting ducks now. You're trapped because the convoy is now blocking all the vehicles behind that destroyed tank. Everyone's a sitting duck. If you're ambushed by rockets, you're in massive trouble. So a lightweight little thing like this could be pushed out of the road by the next vehicle. And they're cheap. One blows up, okay, you might lose 1 or 2 guys. You're not losing a crew of 5. Okay? And so rockets and modern anti-tank weapons, as we've seen in Azerbaijan and Armenia, drones have basically taken the main battle tank, taken its lethality and the queen of the battlefield. It's chopped it down a few pegs. The main battle tank's now vulnerable, and the crews inside it are extremely vulnerable. It's hard to get out of them, under fire. So I'm thinking of something that's easy to get out of, and you'll see all the hatches on these things. These aren't made to be battle-proof. They're not made to run into anti-tank guns. They're not made to run into 50 cal 20 mil cannons. They're made to be back from the front line. They're very small, so they can maneuver through tight little spaces, in between trees, get into nooks and crannies, and get into like little ravines and things like that, to cross creeks, to cross places that are unexpected, to maybe island hop or river hop, so they can cruise over a river without support. This is how you, by outflanking and outmaneuvering your enemy and attacking his vulnerable flanks, this is how you win battles. Okay, so, and denying the enemy access. If you can take the high ground, if you can get fire armored support or fire support vehicles with medium weight weaponry that's got decent range, and you can take the high ground, you can control valleys and etc., just like the Taliban did in Afghanistan. You hold the high ground, and you can, you're extremely hard to defeat. So we don't have to defeat a larger force. We just have to make it extremely expensive for them to take our position. Okay, so and just use your imaginations for weaponry. It can be a drone launcher where it fires lots of drones, suicide drones, lots of little tiny drones. It could be made out of like a cordite type of a thing, or a plastic explosive. It could be made out of nitroglycerin. Like cordite. If any of you guys know what cordite is, it was the propellant used in World War II by the British in lots of different applications, 303s, and they just look like strands of spaghetti. So I don't see a reason why you couldn't make molded shapes out of things like that, and cordite, if detonated, will explode. So you could potentially have a drone of this size. You could have a drone of this size, even smaller again, made out of a plastic explosive that has either a seeker and a camera, and you could have a couple of battery powered with a little propeller on it, or you could have the hover ones with the 4 little propellers or whatever it is, and you could have a couple of different detonator points on it. You could have it so if it lands on something, it explodes. If it runs into it, it explodes. You could have proximity fuses, etc., etc. These are all modern things that we can adapt to very basic, lightweight things. And, you know, these could be packed in tight, wings open up when they come out of a tube. That's like common with lots of weapons these days. So you don't need, you know, really sophisticated stuff, and it can be extremely lightweight. You know, instead of having rifles that shoot bullets that have a straight trajectory, that have recoil, etc., etc., you could have a tube that you reload with little tiny drones that are made of plastic explosive, and they can drive. You can fire 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 away, and you could have someone or yourself could be, you know, even if you're pointing at one target, you could maybe even select how many that you're firing, and then you could guide them with cameras up over trees and around buildings, into windows, and boom, 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 explode inside a room at a sniper or something like that, you know. So, you know, the sky's the limit. You just got to use your imagination, and instead of like leaving it up to big business and whose main concern is profits, these are militia forces, or these are for small little island nations, or our allies that don't have a lot of money and a militia force. It's research and development for the big boys. All of this stuff I'm talking about isn't for the main Army, Air Force, Navy. This is for cadets, reserves, militias. Okay, so we're not trying to step in on what a main battle tank is, or what a proper submarine, or a proper jet fighter, or, you know, anything like that. These are supplementary things that are very, very cheap to make. Things that can improve agriculture and jobs. And where I come from down here in Australia, it's to get people out of the main cities and create industry in localized communities all around the place, because we only need one missile with multiple re-entry vehicles or warheads that are sitting in space, and they could drop one missile, could take out all of Australia's capital cities. Okay, we're not prepared. It's illegal to have bunkers, and we don't have cellars and things like that in our houses because our government doesn't even allow us to have them. We're not even allowed to have fire bunkers. So if Australia is going to stand up in the world and be good to its neighbours and good to everybody else, it needs a strong economy. It needs a strong defence force. It needs strong agriculture and strong industry, and then we can help and influence our neighbours. We'll see how this turns out.